You probably have known this long ago if you've watched these videos before, but I'm getting to be an old guy, or I am an old guy. I remember when radios in a car had buttons. You would preset and then you would push a button and it would move the slide on the AM radio to the particular station that you had set in there. Buttons. Yeah, I guess I got a couple on my shirt, but overall, we don't see many buttons anymore. A remote control, yeah, they still have buttons, but sometimes we do it with our phone. Now here's an old timer, a cassette player, and on the top, buttons. An ad on Minnesota Public Radio says, buttons are highly overrated. Instead, use your smart speaker and say, play Minnesota Public Radio. Kind of strange then that the title for this particular video is Pushing Buttons, but hopefully I'll explain that in the minutes to come. Before I get to that, it happens to be July 3rd, 2022, 4th of July weekend. My two older brothers served in the military. My oldest brother was in the Army and he was partook, I should say, in the Vietnam War. My other brother wasn't involved in war, but he was in the Navy and was a Seabee and served and was stationed in various parts of the world. I never served in the military. There was some thought about it at one point, and at one point I thought maybe I should get into the Air Force Academy or West Point, but coming to think about it, that was more about the prestige of going to one of those places than it was a desire necessarily to be involved in the military. But for all of those who have served, men and women, young and old, in various conflicts or no conflicts at all, I say thank you for your willingness to serve, whether that was by choice or by drafted. Again, whether you served in conflict or whether you simply served stateside or in some other country where you weren't involved in war, thank you for helping us know what freedom is and preserving our freedom. So now I'm going to look at those two themes, one of which is freedom and the other with the title, and they go together, pushing buttons. In the Christian gospel, according to John, Jesus is speaking with the Jewish people who believed in him. And he's talking about enslavement, and their response is, we're descendants of Abraham. We've never been enslaved to anyone. I think we can relate to that, as most of us in the American situation. We celebrate Independence Day when this country gained its independence from England. We've not been invaded. We've not been held captive to anyone. We've had our struggles, but yet we have freedom to assemble, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. If you want to say the capital F, freedoms. And that's a lot of what we celebrate on this 4th of July weekend. So what is freedom? What is pushing buttons? I mean, it seems pretty straightforward. We're free. So what about pushing buttons? Are we talking about pushing buttons with a finger? Well, maybe if the finger's wagging at you or scolding you or trying to humiliate or shame you. One of the earliest remembrances for me of having my button pushed or getting a reaction from me is when my brothers used a nickname, and I don't even know where it came from, but the nickname was syrup, like maple syrup. Whenever they would use that phrase, I would get terribly upset. I grew out of that, but that doesn't mean that other things in life, either as a teenager, young adult, mid-aged adult, older adult, if there are certain things, certain concepts, certain ideas, certain images that push my button. And once my button is pushed, I'm enslaved. My life seems to all of a sudden be surrounded by or encompassed by trying to get out of that, or trying to prove myself, or trying in some way. I'm so focused on that everything else disappears. That is not freedom. That is enslavement. And I think in some ways that's kind of the, if you want to say, small f freedoms. In that same conversation that Jesus is having with those Jewish believers, he says, if you study my word, if you dig into what I'm trying to say, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So in some ways, what is that truth? In another portion of Christian scripture, the Apostle Paul says that everything is lawful, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is lawful, but we should look at what helps our neighbor. And in so doing, if you help your neighbor, you help society, you help yourself. I think that is part of the discovery of truth that Jesus is talking about. That yes, we have vast freedoms, we do in this country, but so often, and I think in some ways lately, we become so focused on the outcome, so blinded by everything else, that we're not free. Yes, get involved. Look at the issues of life. But how can we benefit, if you want to say, the greater good, not just here's my outcome, here's what I want, and I'm going to do everything I can to get it. Everybody else be damned. That's not freedom. Freedom involves giving up. Giving up some of the things that maybe we'd like to do, but we have to set it aside. Giving up that we get the result we want in order to help other people. There's freedom in that. Freedom is not just being able to do what I want when I want it. Freedom is realizing there's a power greater than myself that works in this world. Freedom is not being so invested in the outcome that everything else becomes enslavement. Maybe you've seen that lately, maybe you've experienced it before. But if there's any encouragement for you on this Independence Day weekend, I encourage you to discover truth, to dig in and ask questions, and not just grill your hot dog and say, isn't it nice to be free? But what is it that entraps me or enslaves me? Or what is it that entraps others and enslaves them? And how can I be a part of freedom? Freedom which allows people to live and be at peace with themselves, and also the freedom that allows us to be at peace with our own selves. Once again, thank you for watching.